Morning, Bulldogs. Here is the news updates that you've requested. As you see up here in the top story, lawmakers did make a deal. It was basically overnight, as the last few ones have not been being approved. This, besides expecting to bring aid to people and businesses, like $2 trillion, if you can even understand that number. It's supposed to help the markets rebound a little bit today as well. Already in Europe, they were on a positive note since opening bell. So we'll see ours in a little bit. So here is our US map. It is the world. This looks fairly similar to yesterday. And other photos. Let me know if you checked out any of those webcams I told you about and see how empty these places are. So other news here, we have Prince Charles is confirmed to have the virus. Hospitals and mortuaries, which is where dead bodies go in Spain, are overwhelmed as their death toll increases. The president said at his press conference yesterday he wants the U.S. opened up by Easter. That's been pretty controversial if you see other news sources. And also Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York is warning the people that what's going on in New York could soon spread to the rest of the country. If you want to see them speak, usually Andrew Cuomo, who's been getting a lot of publicity from this, has press briefings around 11, and the presidents are usually later. They change, usually somewhere around 5 o'clock. And you can, keep the news on, you'll see it, go to C-SPAN, you can get updates and things like that. If you guys would like, I can let you know in Classroom when they are. Let me know if that's something you're interested in. So this is about the deal and the markets. Little sub-articles here. Yes, it says you can go outside. Hopefully you're just staying between 6 feet from people. This is the New York as a high-risk area. About 60% of all new cases in the U.S. are reported to be in the New York metro area, which many of you basically in Passaic County are considered to be a part of. In fact, many people are leaving New York, and now yesterday they were told that if someone left New York to go to Florida, to the Jersey Shore, they should self-quarantine for 2 weeks themselves. Things about the airline industry. Ventilators. They think we might not get enough ventilators in this area till June, which we're afraid might be too late for when it spikes. And we just had that steam tank. I wonder what you guys think about what you can do about ventilators and how to make them or something. People can't have proper funerals once they die. How if health workers get sick, who's going to take care of all these people? Families deal with cabin fever. Are you one of them? If that's the case, you may want to read that today. So let me know if you go back and read any of these articles. I'm going to be doing some other news things with you guys. I think by the end of the week, I have some ideas floating around. Another big story, which is no longer on the top page here, so I went to Japan today. So this is a Japanese news source, but it's in English. And yesterday it was agreed that the Olympics in Tokyo would be postponed until 2021. Some things that are not a coincidence as to why that was made. Well, first they were getting international pressure from many other countries, but Tokyo posts its biggest daily jump in the coronavirus infections. And remember, they were dealing with it a bit before we were. Hotels are now worried about, with the postponement, have to deal with the closing from the coronavirus and now not getting the money they are expected to with the Olympics. Abe is the leader, if you will, of Japan. Their Nikkei index, think of like their stock market has gone up a little bit today, so that's good. They're even reporting on what's happening at the White House. So you guys know I went on that conference to learn about the Olympics in Japan, so I think I'm going to put something together for you that shows you what they were doing to prepare. So even though it's postponed, how it still is going to have a big economic and social impact on it. So don't be afraid to try to go and look for other news sources. I know you guys had some questions about which ones can you trust or not, so we're going to go through that a little bit as well. All right, so now we're going to move on to Women's History Month.
Today for Women's History Month, we'll be focusing on Gloria Steinem, who was born on this day in 1934 in Toledo, Ohio.
So today for Women's History Month, here is some more information. Gloria Steinem was a journalist, a feminist, a leader, and a spokeswoman of the women's rights movements in the late 1900s, really through today. As a journalist, she did a lot of what she called women's fluff pieces, things on stockings and fashion and baking. And she wanted more demanding assignments. She wanted to cover political things and international things. And she was really discouraged from doing that, but she pushed ahead to try to get that kind of work. And eventually she helped to found her own magazines where she could cover not just other political things, but ones really specific to women and their issues that they were facing at the time. So she helped found New York Magazine in 1968. And then Ms. Magazine came out in 1971 as an insert to New York Magazine and then became independent on its own by 1972. That year is also the year that she co-founded the National Women's Political Caucus with other women, including some women in Congress. And that is just one example of the many political organizations she helped found to bring issues mainly to women's issues for different things, for equality, for equity in pay, equity in work, reproductive issues, even things like child abuse. She wrote several books. I just included a couple of them there. And to make it a little bit more local, our state university, Rutgers, just a few years ago, created the Gloria Steinem Endowed Chair in Media, Culture, and Feminist Studies. I was reading a little bit last night about who has that chair now. You can Google that and you can find more about it. Something that came out this year, which I found pretty interesting, and I'll take you to this link, it should work, from Time Magazine. And in 1970, she wrote a piece for Time Magazine. And then at its 50th anniversary, which was recently this year, she sort of took the piece she wrote and then she annotated it with things today to see how they apply. So if you want to look this up, I'm just going to show you an example. So she said back in 1970, she saw the labor market changing. And she said, if you wrote here, and decent pay for the bad ones have been performing all along, including housework, but increased skilled labor might lead to a 4-hour workday, and higher wages would encourage further mechanization of repetitive jobs, now kept alive by cheap labor. So she saw the potential for improvement there. However, she noted this year that as people look at screens more than one another, the opposite has happened. The workday never ends. And now that we're all sort of home looking at screens all day long, I thought of that a lot more. Are we working more at home or less? Even moved prior to we've been at home with this virus. Are people taking emails and doing work even after their workday ends? So if you go through her whole piece, she sort of puts, her modern take on what's happening. So I encourage you to check that out. I wanted to conclude my segment on her with thinking about how does she exemplify the STEM values. Oh, and I have a blazer like that I meant to put on today. Maybe I'll wear it for tomorrow. So empathy. She said 2 years ago, the most radical tool we have is empathy. Just imagine ourselves in the situation of the other person and ask them to do the same. And then when it comes to collaboration, she wrote last year, or said last year, how people of all age groups need to collaborate to move the women's movement forward. She said, at a practical level, if I'm going to a meeting where people younger than me don't have access, I will invite them. We all need each other. As an older person, I can supply hope because I remember when it was worse. Young people can supply anger because things should be better. And then with persistence, this quote isn't actually from her, but it's by a journalist who was reporting on her, saying finding another leader with her inspired, consistent persistence will take some doing. So if you study the women's movement, a big question is who is the leader of it now? And there's no real clear answer, as there were, clearly identifiable leaders back in the 60s and 70s, and then obviously earlier, like when we mentioned Matilda Joslyn Gage yesterday. I didn't put one on reflection because many of her books are reflective of her life, but these are just some examples. So keep thinking of other ways that people we discuss share these STEM values.
Take a second to reflect on the ways that Steinem's actions reflect our core STEM values, especially persistence, empathy, and collaboration. Speaking of reflection, that's what you'll be doing today for your assignment. This will count as a project grade where you'll be reflecting on the second trimester, just as you did after the first trimester. You can do this in the form of the Google form I provided for you. If you'd rather make a Google slide, you can do that again. Make sure to include the links, screenshots, or images of what you refer to.
Yeah.
This has been your
Hacked by me.